Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with Nami. My name is Peg Morris and I'll be your host tonight. I am the Assistant Director of Nami, North Carolina. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina. I am so glad y'all are here. Thursdays with Nami is our way of getting through tough times, building conversations and community around the topic of mental health. September is Suicide Prevention Month. Certainly an important thing to remember in our times. Whenever I consider this topic, I'm amazed at how many people we lose, 130 a day in the United States. According to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, white males accounted for 70% of suicide deaths. That's a very high number. Although we've got certain pockets, certain demographics where the numbers are growing at a frightening pace, and those include Black children and youths. 93% of adults surveyed in the United States think suicide can be prevented. So that's a hopeful statement there. Why are so many of us taking our own lives? Oftentimes the answer has to do with mental illness, of course. Depression, substance use, and psychosis are the biggest risk factors according to the World Health Organization. Another red flag is social isolation. All too often, we see mental health challenges paired with loneliness, and it's such a difficult combination. It's an echo chamber of despair. What can we do to keep ourselves and others safe? Our guest tonight has lots of wisdom and experience to help us navigate these difficult questions. Letitia Hill is a licensed clinical mental health counselor, a clinical supervisor, and emotional intelligence expert. She is the past president of the Licensed Professional Counselors Association of North Carolina. In 2016, she was named a 40 Under 40 award recipient by North Carolina Central University. As usual, the first part of our show will be an interview with our guest. Partway through, we'll show a video of the week, and then we'll take time for questions from you, members of our virtual studio audience on Facebook Live and Zoom. First, a word from our sponsors. Funding for Thursdays with Nami comes in part from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Use Services through the Federal Community Mental Health Block Grant Fund. We so appreciate their guidance and their support. Now, without any further ado, welcome, Letitia.
Hello, hello. So good to be here. I'm so excited this evening.
Yeah. So we always like to know the background of our guests and what brought your path to Nami this evening. Tell us about yourself in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a spouse, my wife, my husband of 15 years. I have my son, 14 years old. I'm the youngest of 5 children born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and has been in North Carolina since 1996 and absolutely love it here. Which brings me in the space of mental health. I started out working in research in the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And through gathering information from families and working with children in a behavioral research lab, I just really began finding a deeper passion for the mental health field outside of just going to college for psychology, but actually being hands-on in that space. And that's where everything kind of began, was in the child and adolescent psychiatry department in research. Yes.
Right. So we do have some things in common. I'm the youngest of 6 and was born in Buffalo, New York.
All right, there we go.
Yeah. And we've already got a question from Facebook. Would love to know more about the services for people with serious mental illness in North Carolina. Deborah, we have lots of information on that I can email to you or we can address a little later in the show, but I just want to acknowledge that we did get your question. We also have a wonderful helpline that I'm sure will be shared in the Facebook comment section, and you can call that during business hours and get a list of resources that's local to you. So, um, moving right along to our topic again, Suicide Prevention Month. It means different things to different people.
Mhm.
For me, it got real personal in 2016 when I lost my friend Ian to suicide, young man who was in a support group that I led in Columbus, Ohio. What does it mean to you?
You know, suicide awareness definitely for me, it's a reminder of hope to those who are hopeless. And I think that we don't have a lot of conversation about suicide and prevention and just awareness overall. And just really being able to highlight a month out of the year where we can say there is hope, there are options, there are ways to cope, there's skills that can be learned to help ease the feelings of suicide. Um, I think it's something that really gives people the opportunity to even connect because there is a stigma when it comes to having suicidal thoughts and things. And it gives people the opportunity to be seen and heard and see others that share the same experience. So it really is a space of highlighting something that has such a dark connotation on it so that people can be more forthcoming when they feel the way they feel.
Mhm. I just love that answer because it's positive and it's so true that because of the taboo, because of the fear that suicide evokes in people, we don't want to talk about it. We want to back away.
Mhm,
Um, but for people who have struggled in that area,
mhm.
that feels like a rejection or exclusion. So yeah, it is a fantastic way to make everyone a part of and have an important conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Much needed.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So suicide rates are distressingly high for Black children and youth in particular, and the numbers are increasing at a fast rate.
mhm.
I have to think racism is part of the problem. Are there other significant factors? What are some possible solutions?
Yeah. One factor that I think is going to be a big factor is really feeling hopeless about the future. And with race being a factor in that, that hopelessness even kind of increases because opportunities seem to be slim. I also feel that access to care in certain areas is going to be a big part of that also. Even if there is access to care, sometimes the wait lists are so long because there's not enough providers and there aren't enough entities in place that can see people in the amount of time that needs to be seen. A lot of times during even if someone is in a space where there's a hospitalization, sometimes the follow-up care between hospitalization and having an outpatient appointment can be really long. And that's really the space that is the most helpful. And so not only the access to care, but the availability of providers that can serve the population in order to decrease suicidal thoughts and really be able to walk them through that space to be able to learn coping skills. And so I feel like the biggest solution to that would have to be an increase in the access to mental health care. And I'm really thankful for telehealth kind of coming into play that really bridges the gap between not having access to someone close within the vicinity, but being able to see someone that's out of the city through telehealth until you're able to see someone in the space face to face. So that's been a very big help in just bridging that gap with the access to care and things is telehealth.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think that's one thing that COVID brought that was good is
Mhm. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
more
Absolutely.
sure. Insurers were suddenly willing to pay for it. Even
Mhm.
at NAMI, we got greater permission to do support groups, to do classes online, and we just didn't have it before.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, that's a wonderful thing. I think I'm glad that people can look to folks like you. If,
Mhm.
if I'm looking for a therapist, I probably want someone who looks like me a little bit, who might understand the road that I've walked, some of the stigma
Absolutely.
and discrimination that I faced. So I'm glad that you're there as a role model. And we need more people
Mhm.
of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color
Mhm.
clinicians, mental health professionals of all types
Yeah,
to bridge that gap as well, I think.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, This is a good time for me to mention NAMI support groups. They are for adults only, but they
Mhm.
are free. You can find them on our website, a listing of all virtual support groups. And so if you're in Charlotte, you can attend one. If it originates in Raleigh, Wilmington, wherever, that's a helpful thing.
Yes.
We'd love to see you there. And I'm sure that link will appear in the chat and on Facebook very soon. Um, so what can adults do to help a young person who seems to be struggling? Maybe their mood is down, they look exhausted or stressed. How can we be helpful?
Yeah, so there's a lot of strategies to help children and young adults who are struggling in things. And a lot of it goes into how we communicate with young adults. And the key is going to even be how we engage them in conversation. And one of the things that's helpful with young adults is being able to engage without over questioning. Right. And so a lot of times we feel like we ask them a question and sometimes they'll give us one word answers. How was your day? Fine. How are things going? Good. That's usually how they engage in conversation. Whereas with being really intentional with asking questions such as, was anything hard for you today? Did
Mm,
anything funny happen today? Did you have lunch with a new friend today? Those kind of questions really kind of gets them engaged. Um,
mhm,
Another thing with young adults too is being able to actively engage them in something that they can find meaning with. And
right.
what I found is that young people love to be helpful and they love to be appreciated. And sometimes if they're doing things for you, being able to put it to whereas, okay, can you help me do this as opposed to giving a directive,
Mhm,
sometimes helps them also to say, help me do this. And then when they finish, giving them appreciation so that they can be heard and feel seen. The other thing too is when they do begin to talk as adults, being able to validate them without the drive to fix or provide a solution for them. And
mhm.
that's a big part because a lot of times they just want to be heard. And then when we can say, oh, okay, I hear you, I understand what you're saying without pushing them to find, giving them a solution that we would have, because then it has like another undertone to that, which may not be received. And so being able to converse and engage through validation is a big piece.
That makes perfect sense. I know with young folks, in my own case, I always feel like I should have parental permission or something, even if they're a young adult, if they still live with their parents.
Mhm.
Um, is there, do you have any advice around that?
As far as being able to engage with others or
Yeah, like if I want to help someone,
Mhm.
I don't know, sometimes there's a concern that the parents will be offended, or if I suggest a solution and
Mhm.
maybe the parents don't appreciate that solution. Well, we think faith is the answer or whatever.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
people navigate that boundary?
Yeah, as far as the parents and things and not wanting to overstep. I think it really goes into where the young adult is and being able to sit where they are, because a lot of times there may be parts of them that are growing away from their parents. So a lot of times it's less defiance, more them finding themselves, and
Mhm.
there's like a fine line between defiance and them finding themselves. And when it comes to something where it looks like defiance, I might even address that with them to say, well, what are what's the after effect of that? Is that something that you feel would be helpful? And looking at it from a space of them becoming more self-aware, because a lot of times the young adults will kind of go in a different direction from their parents, and it's not necessarily a negative direction. And if it isn't something that's, illegal, or something that's going to get them in trouble and things like that, a lot of times it kind of grows and they really find a part of themselves that are something that the parents may not have even recognized. So it's a matter of even allowing the parents the ability to be flexible to hear and validate where their young adults are, and where their children are. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's some helpful guidance. I just
Mhm.
find that a little bit tricky, maybe because I don't have children of my own. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
don't want to say the wrong thing.
Right, right, right. It's true though. It's true. It is a delicate line. It is a delicate line, absolutely. Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, we know for all age groups, social isolation is a risk factor for suicide. How do you encourage your clients to make social connections?
Yes. So as far as social connections, there's a couple of things. I usually encourage volunteering in the community, either
Mm.
at a shelter, food pantry, anything that allows volunteers. Animal shelters are a big one, just
Mhm.
being able to be a part of a bigger picture and feel that you're doing something that is connecting you to something you love doing, as well as connecting you to others. Even joining a club or an organization is something that's helpful too. Um, and being able to really find something that you're interested in, when you're looking for those clubs and those organizations. You have some people that choose churches to join and be a part of. You have some people that may choose like a mentoring program, anything like that, where they're engaging with peers, able to have like volunteer tutoring programs, something that just makes meaning, something that creates meaning as well as connecting socially. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the volunteer suggestion really resonates with me because you get such a good feeling about giving back. If
Mhm.
if my esteem is really low going in, it kind of elevates that. So,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely get that one.
Yes.
Um, yeah. One aspect of connecting with other folks is just social skills. And you're an expert in emotional intelligence. How can we improve that for ourselves?
Yes, so there's 5 domains with emotional intelligence, and the biggest one that really speaks to connection is going to be the interpersonal relationship skills that you can develop. And with that, with the interpersonal pieces, we learn empathy and we learn social responsibility, and so that we're able to not only um, be in a place where we can express how we feel, but in order to express how we feel, we also have to receive the message from others as well. And when we get to a place when we are um, more empathetic and really in a place where we can identify what our social connections are, how they're healthy, we're able to know what we want as well and what we need. And that way we're able to express that. And so it's like two things where, you want to, in order to be understood, we also want to be able to understand. And that's where emotional intelligence comes in, to kind of have that back and forth, that cycle kind of be created,
Mm-hmm.
learning to understand so that you can learn how to be understood, because being understood can be hard sometimes, depending on, where you are in places, having the right words to express how you feel, and,
Hmm.
having someone be able to understand that. Mhm.
Yeah, as you were speaking, it occurred to me.
Okay.
My good friends describe me as a great listener. But
Mhm.
if I'm feeling a little bit anxious, it's so hard to listen, like, because you have to sort of calm down and receive the message. So that's
Mhm.
there are a lot of moving parts to social situations, I think more than we realize until we really sit down and analyze it and yeah,
Yeah.
work through the pieces like you just did.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, working through the pieces. Mhm.
All righty. What else should people know about emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so emotional intelligence is one of those things that it can change over time. And it's something that your emotional quotient EQ is what it falls under, and it's something to understand that it can be learned. So for instance, I'll have like an assessment that gives a score for where you may sit with your EQ score, and
Mm,
that changes over time and it changes with different situations, and it's something that really creates balance. And a lot of times people feel that balance has to be 50-50, but balance is more or less just things just moving constantly, because this is not gonna this is not realistic, to have half this, half this. It's usually this and then adjusting to this and just really being able to move with the flow of
mhm,
of life. And I think that's what emotional intelligence um is, as far as being able to teach the skills to help with the ebbs and flows of life,
mhm,
how to manage.
mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it seems like something that is a lifelong learning process for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the good thing also is, just having the understanding that it's a lifelong process, because sometimes you can have something that worked 10 years ago and then it doesn't work today because certain situations have changed, circumstances have evolved, and then it's a matter of being flexible to say, I have to do something new and this new thing will work in where I am now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's another little tap dance is recognizing, okay, something's not working like it used to. What is it? What do I need to change? And
Mhm.
then sort of that process of, okay, I can do this without hating myself. I don't have to get stuck.
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
All
Yes.
right. Um, so back to suicide, I can relate. I personally have struggled with suicidal ideation
Mhm.
at times, the most difficult eras of my life, not every day, but it
Mhm.
is really hard to accept support when we're in that dark space.
Mhm.
Personally, I have an inner critic, and a lot of us have moments of just feeling unworthy of love, unworthy of maybe being saved. How
Mhm.
do we deal with that voice or that? How do we get out of that feeling of I don't deserve help, I don't want help?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I like to do is have a disruption in that process of the conversation that we have with ourselves, and really being in the place to change the conversation that we have with ourselves. And the way that we change that conversation is we offer ourselves counter statements and we ask ourselves, where's the proof that this is the truth?
Mhm,
Right. And so when we have those counter statements, it's that thing that says you're not worthy of this. Then you can then have those targeted counter statements that says, I am worthy of this, even though I feel this way right now. And
mhm,
so it's a way to not necessarily push away how you feel in that moment, but to acknowledge that you feel that way, but being able to have a counter statement as to why that's a moment and why you feel that way. And
mhm,
so I think having that counter statement is something that changes the conversation over time that you have with yourself. And then you begin to find that there isn't proof that says that that's
mhm.
accurate information, you know?
Yeah, it's I like the way you put that. It's almost like you have to win an argument with yourself. You have to
Mhm,
advocate
mhm,
for yourself in your
mhm.
self-talk. So,
Yes, yes, yes. Being your own advocate, self-validation, and
mhm.
having those counter statements definitely helps shift that conversation that we have.
Yeah, and so many of us, it's a something we learn as adults for a lot of us.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so looking at the issue of suicide on a macro level, a larger scale, are there policy changes, funding changes that could help reduce the suicide rate?
I believe that once there's more funding put into greater access to immediate mental health care, and there's more accessible trainings for mental health providers, other professionals as well, to understand um, how suicide is around and how to actually be able to support people even if they don't ask for support, being able to have a supportive environment in a place and having time to have a supportive environment is something that would be helpful also. I really was excited about the 988 line, to be able
Hmm.
to have a phone number that's accessible, easy to remember, and something that's available nationwide. I really am glad about the push for that. And I feel that if there is going to be funding, is to be sure that that line stays equipped with people to answer those calls and really be able to support those that use that line for various reasons. So I definitely feel like the things that are put in place now, the funding should definitely be put in place to make sure those things expand and
Hmm.
stay. Mhm.
I
Yeah,
absolutely support that. And NAMI has been a big advocate of increasing capacity of the mental health system, increasing
yeah,
funding, including Medicaid expansion. So
yes.
yeah. So what gives you hope? You deal with a lot of tough stuff.
Yeah. So I think the thing that gives me the most hope is really the passion of mental health providers and those that advocate for mental health awareness and mental health services. Associations and organizations give me hope that there are organizations such as NAMI that are there reaching out and accessible. There's organizations that are there to support professionals that are providing the care and things like that. Um, Definitely all of those spaces that support the mental health push, all the places that support ethical care, all of these things are things that I feel are that gives me hope. And just seeing how the mental health field has grown in the
Mhm.
last 2 years, and I'm really hopeful about the growth and the stability of the professionals that are coming in to serve the
Mm.
clients and things. Because it's something when you think about over the last 2 years, I'm really glad that the magnifying glass was on to really highlight people are struggling, people who weren't struggling, people who didn't know they were struggling, people who were struggling are struggling more,
Mm.
and I'm really grateful for the last 2 years really highlighting the fact that we need to pay attention and be aware of those that need the support. And so that definitely makes me hopeful for the future.
Mhm. Yeah, I tend to feel uplifted when I focus on the people around me, the small groups. I guess the Margaret Mead type saying, small groups of people can make change. They're the only thing that ever has.
Mhm.
Um, you also made a reference to ethical care, which I haven't really heard it put that way before. What does that mean?
Now, ethical care really goes into, and the way that I really think about it is when an entity provides care with putting the client first and not necessarily thinking about the bottom line, and being able to provide that care based off of what the client needs, being able to provide that care based off of things that being in the space knowing that they may need more and they may have to be referred to a higher level because that entity may not be able to serve that client. And so really just thinking about it as far as the client's needs being first and thinking about the bottom line, not the priority.
Got it. Got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is me speaking personally. I've said for a long time the profit motive should really be divorced from healthcare. So I
Yeah.
love that. Now that I understand,
Mhm.
um, that's a
Mhm.
great explanation. I love that. And
Yes.
I may steal it.
Yes, you can take it. Pass it on.
All righty. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we shift to our video of the week?
Um, the only thing is to just be in a place if you need any support, definitely knowing that the space is here for those that need support. Judgment-free zone is where the mental health space is, and just being in a place to reach out, reaching out. Yes.
All right.
Yes. Definitely.
Well, great great words to pause on. We are
Yes.
going to wrap up the interview portion of the show now. Thanks everyone for being with us. Before we move to our video, a big shout out to our heroes working behind the scenes. We've got our social work intern from App State, Caitlin Rita, and psychiatric nurse Gail Pruitt on Facebook and chat. And of course, our deepest thanks to Letitia for spending your evening with us. Got a neat video of the week created by our national office, and got some real familiar faces in here. They're really good at getting celebrities to advocate for mental health. So let's check this out. I thought this was pretty great. It's okay to not feel okay.
It's okay to think you're in a toxic relationship with the world right now.
It's okay to feel like your world is changing.
It's okay if it's hard to find the words to express how you feel.
It's okay to feel like you just want to become someone else.
It's okay if you're panicking over an inability to control your life right now.
It's okay to have trouble maintaining your normal routine while staying home.
It's okay if you're feeling more cynical than usual.
It's okay if you want to curse more than you usually do.
It's okay to wear your favorite tank top several days in a row.
It's okay to miss your job.
It's okay to just stay quiet.
It's okay to be depressed.
It's okay to talk to your cats like they understand what you're saying.
It's okay not to feel the most fabulous right now.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
All right. It's okay to talk about how you feel. I just love that. All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, big names there. All righty, so now it's time to take questions from you, members of our virtual studio audience, live and on Facebook. And so we've already acknowledged one question that came up early in the show from Deborah on Facebook. Would love to know more about the services for people with serious mental illness in North Carolina. And Deborah, that's going to depend on your personal situation, but I would encourage you to find out your local management entity / managed care organization, which offers services to Medicaid and folks who are in between Medicaid income and affordable health care. So if you're in that gap of uninsured folks, your local LMEMCO can help. And I'm sure Letitia has ideas for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned with the LME, because that's a big one, being able to see what's available in the area. Also being able to even check in if it isn't with the LME, depending on if the employers have EAP programs, because sometimes they will have employee assistance programs that can give a certain amount of sessions that kind of bridges if there's a greater need. So even through your employers asking about employee assistance programs is something that's helpful also. Online, going on a website called Psychology Today. Sometimes has therapists that you can search for and be able to send them an email, let them know that you need to see someone. And sometimes they'll have either if they're books, sometimes they'll have interns that will also provide bridge care in order to help with like wait list and things like that.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. And I should mention that in many states, the community mental health system refers folks to Nami, to our free support groups and classes, to tide you over between making that first call and waiting for your first appointment, because sometimes it can be months. It takes way too long in our system right now. So please check out Nami. We're not clinical care. We don't try to be, but it is very liberating and helpful to talk to someone who understands. And all of our groups and classes are peer led by people who've been there. So either I have a mental health challenge myself or I have a loved one. We do classes and groups for both the family members and the peers or person with mental health challenge. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Yes.
Question from Caitlin. I currently work with college-age students with autism in a non-clinical setting and often struggle to help them deal with social isolation. That's tough. Knowing that the rate of suicide is up to 3 times higher in these populations, do you have any suggestions on how to best support them?
The biggest question also would be if they are receiving targeted care for autism, such as applied behavioral analysis and things. So having an ABA therapist, which is sometimes hard to find and things with wait times and things like that. Partnering with the families is a big part too, being able to put plans in place that fosters a sense of well-being and consistency, and being able to be present. And like we had talked about, having them feel seen and supported and appreciated, so there's a lot of meeting them where they are in order to get to that space where they feel that they can come to you and talk and go to their supports at home and things. So being able to really meet them where they are and having resources to follow up.
Yeah, I've heard of support groups for folks with autism. I can't name one in particular, but I know they're out there.
Yeah. And usually like agencies like that specifically works with ABA therapists and things sometimes will have support groups and things that are kind of in their agency.
Right. Well, I'm going to make a couple announcements. We have a lull in the questions. So I know everyone's thinking about what they can ask Letitia while we have her expertise with us. Please fill out the survey when you leave Zoom. A survey will magically appear. And by filling that out, you're helping us to improve over time and show the funders the value of what we do and the fact that we're actually doing a show and getting survey results from real participants. So thank you for filling out that survey in advance. Join us next week. Again, for Suicide Prevention Month, we're having Sean Wellington. He's a gifted storyteller and host of the highly rated podcast, Suicide Noted. So check us out and meet Sean. He's a very insightful and entertaining speaker. And let's see. Sometimes we go 45 to 60 minutes. Sometimes we go longer. It depends on the energy and the number of questions we get. Is there a question that we have not asked that you think we should?
I can't think of one. Let's see. Can't think of a question. I think we've covered a lot.
We have in a short time. You're a very succinct speaker. I
Thank
do
you.
know Of course. I was going to ask you about your self-care. You had alluded to before the show a self-care routine at the end of the day. Can you share
Yes.
it with us?
Now I have a couple depending on the severity of the day. And so a lot of my self-care, I kind of use it as a circuit so that it doesn't become something that I get used to. And so one self-care routine that I would have consists of giving myself a facial. And it's
Mm.
just really if I decide to use like something fancy like exfoliant. That's like, okay, we're going beyond soap now. We're using an exfoliant and a toner. We're doing big things. So that is a self-care routine for me. Another one is I use aromatherapy and I use different essential oils just to kind of relax and things like that. I also I'll have that going, and then I like to do extreme connect the dots, where it's like it goes up to like 400 sometimes, and it's like very detailed. And I do that more or less as like a mindfulness kind of idea because it's something that's focused. I have to find the numbers and things, and I have to then have a product at the end. And so then it gives me kind of something to look forward to. And then that's one. The other one is I also like to experiment with different teas. And so I will sometimes have like maybe I think, which tea am I doing now? I think I'm doing like a shiitake mushroom and turmeric tea, kind of
Ooh.
deal with some honey, and then I'll just kind of sit back and listen to some music, drink some tea. And my other self-care, you see I have a lot, right? My other
Like it.
self-care routine, I like seafood, and so sometimes I will have like a couple of crab legs and just really be mindful, because there's something I think is significant about anything that kind of takes a process to kind of eat as opposed to just eating. And so I would do something like that just to kind of be really mindful of what the activity of cracking the shell, dipping it, and just going through and making it more of like a mindfulness routine. So a lot of my self-care routine is based really on the senses and really being able to experience it. So just like with an exfoliant, it's just about the texture, right? With the aromatherapy, it's about the smell. The teas and the crab legs are about the taste. And so everything is very enlightening to all the senses just to kind of begin to recenter. So it's intentional.
Mm. I think I just had an epiphany about why I like pistachios so much.
That's my favorite too. I
Yeah.
love pistachio ice cream and I love pistachios, the shell, and yes.
It's the process, the ritual. I
It's
like
the
it.
process, yes.
Mhm.
Mhm,
All
mhm.
right. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on tonight. Um, thank you so much. I really appreciate your eloquence and
Thank you.
your comments have a lot of wisdom and a lot of heart to them. So thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And I appreciate being here. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to partner again in this way. Uh,
Yes.
Yay. And folks who are out there, if you're out there feeling alone, not sure what to do, please give us a call at NAMI. We've been there, we understand, and we'd love to connect you with some resources, help find a solution. So thanks everyone and have a wonderful long weekends.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
All
Bye.
right. Good night.
Good night.